Welcome. Welcome to the course La lectura en inglés desde el enfoque de los géneros. En este curso vamos a trabajar con los enfoques de lectura más actuales que proponen la incorporación de los textos como unidades semánticas de sentido que transmiten información real. La pedagogía basada en los géneros, es decir, en los tipos textuales, y la psicolingüística han contribuido de manera significativa en las investigaciones de lectura en lengua extranjera con resultados que pueden transferirse a las clases de inglés de la escuela primaria y secundaria. Reading. What is reading? Definitely, it's a complex process. Plainly speaking, it is drawing information to interpret a text. But it is much more. It is human expertise, of course, and it has a significant cognitive achievement. When we begin to read, we actually have a number of initial decisions to make, and we usually make these decisions very quickly, almost unconsciously in most cases. For example, when we pick up a newspaper, we usually read the front page with some combination of search, processing, general reading comprehension, and skimming. Let's revise the purposes for reading. The most basic, perhaps, to search for simple information. To skim quickly, reading to get something quickly. Reading to learn from text. Reading to integrate information. Reading to write or search for information needed for writing. Reading to critique texts or to critique authors or schools of thoughts. And reading for general comprehension. Reading to search for simple information and reading to skim are common reading abilities. It is used so often in reading tasks that is probably best seen as a type of reading ability. In reading to search, we typically scan the text for a specific piece of information or specific word. Similarly, reading to skim, that is, sampling segments of the text for a general understanding, is a common part of many reading tasks and a useful skill in its own right. It involves, in essence, a combination of strategies for guessing where important information might be in the text, and then using basic reading comprehension skills on those segments of the text until a general idea is formed. Reading to learn from text typically occurs in academic and professional contexts in which a person needs to learn a considerable amount of information from a text. It requires abilities to remember main ideas as well as a number of details that elaborate the main and supporting ideas in the text, recognize and build rhetorical frames that organize the information in the text, and link the text to the reader's knowledge base. Reading to integrate information, write, and critique text requires additional decisions about the relative importance of complementary, mutually supporting, or conflicting information and the likely restructuring of a rhetorical frame to accommodate information from multiple sources. These skills inevitably require critical evaluation of information being read so that the reader can decide what information to integrate and how to integrate it for the reader's goal. Reading for general comprehension is one of the basic purposes for reading. It underlines and supports most other purposes for reading. Generally, reading comprehension is actually more complex than commonly assumed. These assertions that have to do with reading for general comprehension, it is accomplished by a skilled fluent reader, and it requires very rapid and automatic processing of words, strong skills in forming a general meaning representation of main ideas, and efficient coordination of many processes under very limited time constraints. Now, the activity of reading implies skills and strategies. Uh, Skills represent linguistic processing abilities that are relatively automatic in their use and their combinations. For example, word recognition, syntactic processing. Strategies are often defined as a set of abilities under conscious control of the reader, though this common definition is not likely to be true. In fact, many abilities that are commonly identified as strategies are relatively automatic in their use by fluent readers. For example, skipping an unknown word while rereading to reestablish text meanings. So the distinction between skills and strategies is not entirely clear, precisely because that is part of the nature of reading and not a definitional problem. Reading is a process or processes that refer to cognitive activity involving skills, strategies, attentional resources, knowledge resources, and their integration. The term abilities is used as a general term that covers comprehension skills, strategies, and knowledge resources available to the reader. Some examples of reading strategies include specifying purpose, planning steps, what steps to take, previewing the text, predicting the context, checking the predictions, posing questions about the text, finding those answers, connecting text to the background knowledge, summarizing information, making inferences, connecting one part of the text to another, rereading, guessing meaning in context, using discourse markers to see relationships, critiquing the author and the text, judging purposes, etc., etc. Now, let's turn to handout 1, task 1. You are going to read a text in Romanian. We know we don't speak Romanian, but there are several things that we can infer and understand our skills and strategies for reading, and that would be very useful to teach in our classes. When you finish doing task 1, the reading, and the questions on the analysis, come back to go on talking about reading strategies. There are several models of reading. The most common ones are the bottom-up model, the top-down model, and the interactive model. In the bottom-up model is concerns with the mechanical patterns of the language, and it's piece-by-piece mental translation of information. The background knowledge of the person who's reading has little or no interference in this model. The top-down model, on the contrary, finds useful information. It is directed by the reader's goals, and inferencing is a prominent feature. That is, the background knowledge the student or the reader has is very important for this kind of model. It's a general and metaphorical view also, and characterize the reader as someone who has a set of expectations about the information in the text, and to accomplish this, the reader directs the eyes to the most likely places in the text to find the useful information. The interactive model of reading is a combination of both models. So the simple idea behind this view is that one can take useful ideas from a bottom-up perspective and combine them with the key ideas from a top-down view. So word recognition needs to be fast and efficient, but background knowledge is a major contributor to text understanding. as is inferencing and predicted what will come next in the text. Reading is a complex nature, a complex nature, and we have to take into account lots of factors. These factors have to do with the models of reading, the purposes of reading, the processes of reading, and the components of reading. The models of reading we've seen is bottom-up models, top-down models, interactive models. The components of reading have to do with the working memory processing, lower level components like lexical access, syntactic access, and the higher level components that have to do with the models of comprehension and the model of reader interpretation. The processes required for fluent reading have to do with a rapid and efficient process, strategic process, flexible, evaluating. So those are the things that have to happen in your mind when you are reading. And the purposes for reading, as we have seen, have to do with searching for simple information, skimming quickly, learning from text, integrate information, write, critique the text, general comprehension, etc., etc. Now, what happens when we have to select text for reading? Three things we have to take into account. And those things are topic, mode, and genre. Let's see them in more detail. Now, when we talk about topic or subject matter, we need to see what is relevant according to our curriculum design and how relevant is it to our teaching goals. When we talk about mode, we are talking about how that topic is written. How highly is the language written? It needs to be at a level that is appropriate for the stage we're teaching. Primary, secondary, younger kids, adults. The appropriate language level for the stage may be challenging for students, but there is when scaffolding from teachers becomes so important. There is no need to use low-level text in the classroom. What you adapt are the tasks. Genre. Genre tells us what kind of text we are working with, what is the main purpose of that text, and how it is organized. But what is genre? A form of text that uses a particular format and structure. From the primary grades, students need to know that there are different kinds of texts, and each with its own features, purposes, and conventions. Even very young learners can learn that a narrative tells a story, that a persuasive text is written to persuade a reader, and informational text is written to give the reader facts. Now, why is this important? If the students know from young age and from low levels that a persuasive text has certain patterns, certain structures, certain vocabulary, it will be much easier for them to read that text, to get the structure of that text, and later on to write. Here are some of the most common genres used in the school curriculum, where we can take from for our own English lessons. You can see that it's a huge array of different genres that we normally don't use them all, or I would say we use very few. For example, anecdotes, narratives, personal recounts, autobiographical recounts, biographical recounts, historical ones, descriptive, compositional, and procedural text, expository text, personal response, review, etc., etc. We know that genres are fictional And within fiction, we can have realistic, historical, science fiction, fantasy. We also have drama and its divisions like comedy and tragedy. But we can also resort to nonfiction text. And within nonfiction text, there are some genres like informational writing, persuasive writing, biographies, autobiography. We can also take from the folklore genre that is so rich with fables, myths, tall tales, legends, fairy tales, and we can also use poetry. Now, let's go to the second part of our handouts where you've got different genres that may be used in the classroom. I want you to um, take a couple of them, analyze them, and see what is the recurrent language use, what kind of text it is, and think how it could be used in a class. When you are done, come back here and we will continue our talk. Let's see persuasive text in details. What kind of text is a persuasive text? It's a text that wants you to do something. Can you see one in the examples? Oh, what are the characteristics of this persuasive text? There are repeated words, capital letters, exclamation marks, rhetorical questions, emotional arguments, and sometimes humor. Now, knowing these characteristics will help us much more in telling our students what to expect from those texts. On the other hand, instructive texts are the ones that tells you how to do something. Have you found one in our examples? Now, what are the characteristics of this kind of text? They are addressed to the reader, they have direct language, often use of must, mustn't, also use of diagrams and pictures to make it more attractive and explanatory. Unnecessary words are normally left out. Now, if you think of the instructive text you've got in the examples, you can apply all these structures. Now, let's imagine that we are analyzing one recipe. Can you see one in our handouts? Yes, there's one in our handouts. Now, let's see from the point of view of function and features. The function determines the features because the aim of this text, that is a recipe, is to instruct how to do a dish. So the features that we are going to analyze now come directly from the function. What is the possible location of a recipe? Of course, it could be a magazine or a recipe book. Or it could also be a notebook written by your grandmother. Now, what is the topic focus of a recipe? Of course, how to prepare food. How is it shown visually? What is its aspects? Well, it can have bold title, pictures and diagrams in colors to make it more attractive. What about the length? Well, I would say that it's a page as maximum because if a recipe is very long, nobody would try it. What about the structure? Normally, it contains a title, pictures are optional, but they may appear, then the ingredients, and then the instructions that can have first, second, third, or a narrative style. What's the subject, the focus, or the agent? The imperatives, for example, and the ingredients are in describing discourse, while the instructions are in interactive discourse. I mean, the ingredients are described, while the instructions appeal to the reader. What is the style and the register? Well, a recipe is relatively informal in register and style. What's the grammar, the linguistic objectives that we need in a recipe or that we would find in a recipe? Imperatives, some conditionals, simple short sentences. And the lexis, well, of course, cooking terms, names of foods and utensils, weights and measures. Now, what's the idea? Take a text from the ones you use. Please try to find an authentic text, not the ones that come in your textbooks. Find it from different genres, it could be more than one, appeal to different genres, and please analyze it as we did a second ago. Look for these charts using mode, model, genre also, and bring it to the following meeting that we are going to share with others and think about possible reading tasks. We are going to go on working with this in our next class. Thank you. See you in the next meeting.